People were trying to hang on to the possibility this whole time. Look, so many people stayed engaged with the team because they thought the cavalry was coming. She's coming back. We're going to have a fighting chance to win the WNBA championship. The Indiana Fever and the WNBA, they knew this.
Before we get into the shocking details that changed everything, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. What you're about to hear is a story the WNBA hoped would never get out, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. What the entire rise of professional sports league was built on a single fragile pillar. What if that pillar was removed in an instant and the entire structure began to crumble before anyone could even react? This isn't a hypothetical scenario. This is the exact, shocking reality the WNBA is facing right now, a reality they tried desperately to keep hidden behind press releases and polished statistics. From record-shattering highs to a panic-driven freefall, the story of what happened when Caitlyn Clark went down as a masterclass in what happens when hype meets hard truth. And the truth is far more brutal than anyone could have ever imagined.
And the Indiana Fever did not want people to know that Caitlyn Clark was going to be out for the season. I can tell you, from the very day that they decided to let that go public, everything has dropped off a cliff.
It all started with what looked like a genuine sports revolution. For the first time in decades, the WNBA wasn't just a niche interest for die-hard fans. It was a mainstream phenomenon, a perfect storm of talent, timing, and one electrifying player who captured the nation's attention. ESPN finally had its new golden child, a figure they could promote around the clock. And the audience was absolutely hungry for it. Arenas across the country, venues that were usually half empty and echoing with silence, were suddenly packed to the rafters, buzzing with energy that hadn't been felt in years. Every single highlight clip featuring one specific player was instantly going viral, racking up millions upon millions of views from people who had never once searched for a women's basketball game in their lives. This wasn't just about sports anymore. It was a full-blown cultural moment. The Indiana Fever weren't just a team. They were the must-see main event, the hottest ticket in town. Every single road game felt like a home game because thousands of fans would travel across state lines, not for the logo on the jersey, but for the number 22 on the court.
People felt like they were going to games thinking this team would have Caitlyn Clark coming back to make a championship run. I mean, the perfect example, the game in Baltimore the other day with the Mystics. Nearly 3,000 fans decided not to show up, and they paid for the ticket.
They came to witness history, to see the impossible passes and the logo threes that became her signature. Ticket prices were soaring, averaging $89 a seat, a number that seemed unthinkable just a season prior. The league was boasting about its record-breaking viewership, and for a brief, shining moment, it seemed like women's basketball had finally, truly arrived on a world stage in a permanent way. The energy was electric, palpable, and it all orbited around one undeniable, generational force of nature who was single-handedly rewriting the playbook on what was possible for the sport. But behind the glittering facade, a secret was being kept. The very foundation of this incredible boom was already cracked, built on a house of cards that was terrifyingly vulnerable. The day the decision was made behind closed doors to finally announce that Caitlyn Clark would be out for the season, everything changed in an instant.
Before Caitlyn Clark's season-ending injury, WNBA tickets were averaging $89. The moment she went down, price crashed nearly 30%, plummeting to $62 a seat. That's kind of crazy. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but obviously the biggest reason is Caitlyn Clark. Caitlyn Clark literally being out, and again, she's only on one team, but a very big chunk of the total attendance in WNBA is from the Indiana.
It wasn't a gentle decline or a slow fade into obscurity. It was a straight up vertical drop off a cliff, a catastrophic collapse that happened in plain sight. One week, you had packed houses, roaring crowds, and national media buzz that dominated sports headlines. The very next week, you could hear a pin drop in those same arenas. The silence was deafening and told a story all its own. The league and the Fever front office knew exactly what was coming. They had to have seen the data and understood the immense risk. They understood that the moment that information went public, the entire illusion of broad-based growth would shatter into a million pieces, exposing an uncomfortable dependency. So they let the hope linger, carefully controlling the narrative. They allowed fans to believe, to keep buying those increasingly expensive tickets, thinking the cavalry was coming, that she'd be back for a miracle playoff run to save the day. They dangled that false hope like a carrot because they knew the alternative, telling the blunt truth, would lead to an immediate and devastating financial and reputational collapse. It was a calculated gamble, and it was one they ultimately lost.
So yeah, a lot of teams, whether it be the Lynx opening the upper bowl, whether it be the Wings, the Dream, the Sky, all of these teams moving games. All of these teams are moving games for the Indiana Fever, regardless of who it is. They all have to sell those seats. And a lot of people don't want to go, and it's super cheap. Like, it's a lot easier to fill a 10,000 seat arena without Caitlyn Clark than to fill 20,000. So you're going to have to find a way to do it anyway, which is what a lot of people are going to be doing, trying to sell tickets. The seats for the playoffs, I would say the Indiana Fever playoff seats would have been, honestly, like nearly $1,000 in. I actually think had Caitlyn Clark been playing, it would be nearly $1,000 into this game.
And collapse it did. The numbers are so stark, so brutally clear and undeniable that they tell the whole story without any need for spin or corporate PR. Let's talk about ratings, the ultimate metric for mainstream relevance. Just before the injury news fully settled in, a marquee matchup between the Fever and the Chicago Sky, featuring the much-hyped Clark and Angel Reese rivalry, pulled in a staggering 2.7 million viewers. To put that in perspective, that number beat some primetime Major League Baseball games, and even rivals some NHL playoff numbers. It was a figure the WNBA hadn't seen in generations, a signpost of incredible progress. Now, fast forward to the first major game after her absence was felt. That same Indiana Fever team, now without its star, played the Washington Mystics. The viewership number wasn't 1 million. It wasn't even 500,000. It limped in at an anemic 270,000. That's a 90% drop, a catastrophic evaporation of audience interest. Another hype game barely scraped past 1 million viewers, but even that was a fraction of the prior excitement. Suddenly, the league's broadcasts weren't must-see TV events. They were back to drawing audiences smaller than some high school championship games, falling into territory of late-night reruns and obscure YouTube influencers. The spotlight had vanished as quickly as it appeared, and the darkness that followed was absolute, proving that the casual viewer's interest was tied to a singular phenomenon, not the league as a whole. If you think the TV numbers are bad, the real-world financial impact is even more damning and reveals the true depth of the crisis. Remember those $89 average tickets? That was the price of admission to the Caitlyn Clark experience. The moment she was officially ruled out for the season, the market reacted instantly and ruthlessly. Ticket prices didn't just dip, they crashed, and we're not talking about a small discount or a seasonal sale. They plummeted by nearly 30% almost overnight, falling just $62 a seat on the secondary market, as demand completely evaporated. But the most powerful, symbolic moment of this entire disaster happened in Baltimore. Nearly 3,000 people who had already paid for their tickets to see the Fever play the Mystics simply did not show up. Think about that for a second. These fans had already spent their hard-earned money. They had the seats reserved and the tickets printed. And they still looked at those tickets and decided it wasn't worth their time, gas money, or effort to even go. That isn't just disinterest or a scheduling conflict. That a feeling of outright betrayal and a statement on the product's value without its main attraction. They paid for Caitlyn Clark, and they felt they received a product that was utterly incomplete and inferior without her. It was the most honest, brutal review a fan could possibly give. And for the league, it was absolutely devastating evidence of their fragile ecosystem. So, what does a sports league do when its entire business model suddenly implodes and the facade crumbles? If you're the WNBA, the answer isn't a long-term strategy, it's the panic. And the panic button they press is as laughable as it is transparently desperate. The solution? Force the Indiana Fever to play their games in Atlanta. Yes, you heard that correctly. The league genuinely believes that uprooting a team from its home city and moving it to a market that has historically struggled for decades to support its own WNBA team will somehow solve this massive, fundamental problem. This isn't a strategy built on growing the game. This is a desperate, flailing attempt at optical illusion, a magic trick meant to distract the audience. They don't want national cameras panning across a sea of empty, embarrassing seats in Indiana, so they'll move the game to a smaller, more manageable arena in Atlanta. They can hand out a bunch of free tickets to local corporations and schools, heavily discount everything, and hope that on television, it looks like people still care and the stands are somewhat full. They're trying to hide the brutal, undeniable truth that without their one star, organic demand has completely and utterly evaporated. It's the oldest trick in the book, like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. The setting might look different for a second, but the ship is still taking on water and going down. Because moving a game doesn't address the core issue of a product that the mass market only wants with one specific player. And this is where the league's narrative completely falls apart, exposing the vast chasm between their public relations spin and the undeniable, harsh reality. For months, we were fed a consistent message. Caitlyn Clark was just a rising tide that lifts all boats. She was presented as the entry point, the gateway drug that would introduce a new, massive audience to the incredible depth of talent the WNBA had to offer. We were consistently told, almost lectured, to look past the one phenom and appreciate the established, legendary talents of players like the phenomenal Aya Wilson, a dominant force and former MVP, the versatile and champion-level Breanna Stewart, and the iron-willed Alyssa Thomas. And let's be perfectly clear, and this is a crucial point, these women are not just good, they are phenomenal once-in-a-generation athletes whose resumes and skill sets are the stuff of legend. Their talent is unquestionable. But here's the uncomfortable, devastating truth the WNBA never wanted you to see, the reality that the data forces us to confront. The casual fan, the millions of new viewers who tuned in for the first time, they simply did not connect with those other players in a way that translated to sustained viewership. The ratings for premier matchups that did not feature Clark, even those showcasing these other superstars, are not just low, they are abysmal, often returning to the pre-Clark baseline that the league has struggled with for years. We're talking about games dipping to 30, maybe 40,000 viewers on some platforms, numbers that are frankly embarrassing for a professional sports league with national television contracts. Even the best of these games, heavily promoted on ESPN, might scrape together 200,000 viewers on a good night, a fraction of the audience a Clark game commands. This creates a stark, inarguable truth that is incredibly awkward for the league. The combined star power, marketing appeal, and drawing ability of the entire rest of the league's best players cannot currently match the mainstream cultural pull of one single rookie. The beloved all boats rise theory has been decisively sunk, not by opinion, but by the cold, hard, unforgiving data of Nielsen ratings and ticket sales analytics. The metaphor was flawed from the start. It turns out the other boats weren't just waiting for a tide. Many of them had significant holes, issues with marketing accessibility, and relatability to a broader audience that the league had never solved. The Clark tide did cause a swell, but the second she went down, the water rushed back out, revealing those same old holes and leaving the boats right back where they started, perhaps even more exposed than before. This isn't a criticism of the athletes' abilities, but a damning indictment of the league's long-term strategy and its failure to build a product that resonates beyond one transcendent individual. It proves that the boom was never about the WNBA itself or these new fans. It was about a specific must-see event, and without that event, the audience sees no reason to stick around. So, what are we ultimately left with after all the hype has faded and the hard numbers have rolled in? We're left with a league that is completely and totally exposed, its vulnerabilities laid bare for the entire sports world to see. The WNBA, whether its commissioners and executives want to admit it or not, inadvertently tied its entire wave of recent relevance to the presence and performance of one singular player. Her logo threes, her impossible no-look passes, her audacious court vision, that wasn't just entertainment. It was the very engine driving unprecedented interest and revenue. Everything else, the other teams, the legendary veterans, the playoff races, was just along for the ride. Passengers in a vehicle powered by one unique force. Now that engine has been removed, and the vehicle hasn't just slowed down, it has ground to a jarring, devastating halt, revealing that there might not have been a fully functional backup plan underneath all along. This entire saga is a brutal, real-time lesson in the dangers of unsustainable growth and putting short-term buzz ahead of long-term stability. Instead of using this once-in-a-lifetime surge of attention to diligently build a wider, more resilient base of marketable stars and compelling human interest stories that could collectively captivate a broad audience, the league and its media partners effectively put all their chips on one single square. They rode the wave without building a more seaworthy vessel. And when that square, Caitlyn Clark, vanished from the board, the entire house of cards came crashing down in an instant. The desperate move to Atlanta, the constant spinning of cherry-picked year-over-year numbers, the hollow PR campaigns urging fans to appreciate the rest of the league, none of it changes a core, undeniable fact. The fans, the very people who determine success or failure, have cast their vote in the most definitive way possible, with their remote controls, their ticket purchases, and their decision to simply stay home. Their message is clear. They wanted to see Caitlyn Clark. Without her, the product, in its current form, just doesn't matter enough to them to maintain that level of engagement. This leads us to the most critical, existential question of all. Can the WNBA truly survive a future where its financial health and mainstream visibility appear to be so dangerously dependent on the health and availability of one person? Is that a realistic or fair business model for any professional sports league aiming for longevity? Or has this entire experience revealed a fundamental, deep-seated fragility within the league's structure and appeal, a reliance on a singular cultural phenomenon rather than a deep-rooted love for the game itself that can never truly be fixed? The league now stands at a crossroads. It can continue its desperate optical illusions, or it can finally confront this painful truth and embark on the hard, unglamorous work of building a product so compelling that it can survive and even thrive without relying on one star to carry the entire weight of the sport on her shoulders. The ball is now in their court. What do you think? Is the WNBA nothing without Caitlyn Clark, or is this just a temporary setback? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. And if this deep dive into the shocking truth behind the scenes surprised you, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content you won't hear anywhere else.